Well, good evening, everybody. It's Kerry from the Whistle Stop Cafe and the Chris Kerry Show. It's the name down there. I can't even tell where I am. We're waiting for Chris to come along, but I know he usually opens a book, and you know what? I wasn't quick enough to grab a book, and but that's okay because we've got a great show. We're talking with MartyUpNorth today. We're going to be talking about a discussion on Alberta sovereignty, and it's a discussion that, man, it's been years in the making, as well as there's a lot of hot topics that are going out there right now in terms of Trudeau program government, things that are happening in our own Alberta legislature and maybe even outside of the legislature, and as well as the 51st state and Trump and all that. So we wanted to get Marty in, and one of the things, of course, that our viewers know is that I was hosting, and still technically am hosting, the Alberta Prosperity Project webinars, and we took a bit of a hiatus for a while. I had a lot of stuff going on in my own life as well as business and blah blah blah, and I just couldn't commit to doing it for Wednesdays, and we tried to make it more into a podcast as opposed to doing live. But I do like the idea of doing something as a live so that we can have the audience engage and have discussions with us, especially on topics that are relevant as this. And one of the things, again, that has been plaguing me, I guess, in terms of this is we like to offer solutions. Everything that we seem to talk about is, okay, how do we do this? Well, through APP, we have the 5 pillars of independence that we can get to, and we want to bring all those things down. But there's so much going on that there's a lot of times where even myself feel so overwhelmed that you kind of go, well, what are we going to do? There's just nothing that we can do. But there are solutions, and it's a matter of us all coming together and discussing and influencing government, and educating ourselves and educating others. And I think as long as we can go through those steps, I think we're in a much better place. Otherwise, we're all just moving to Costa Rica, because I'm not quite sure what else doing. And especially on the last couple of weeks, if anybody is here in Alberta or even in Western Canada, you know how ungodly cold it has been for the last little while. But you know what? We're Canadians. We would be complaining if it was a minus 30 in January, and here it is, minus 25 in February, and we complain about things. But we are a hardy bunch, and we persevere, and we get through things. And so that's kind of what we're hoping to come up with and have some solutions. And maybe by the end of this podcast, Chris will be able to join us and offer his own idea on some solutions as well. So with that, I'm going to bring Marty on. How you doing, Marty?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. Quite overwhelmed with everything that is going on in the world right now.
I heard your introduction while sitting in the back room, and breaking down complex problems into something that seems more manageable is actually something I spent a lifetime doing as an engineer.
Yeah.
When I started my career, my projects were small, and as I progressed, some of my projects were big. I mean, I did billion-dollar projects. And when you have a billion-dollar project and you bring a room together, the first thing you have to do is you have to tell people, first of all, you have to show some confidence and say, listen, we will get to the finish line. We will build this, trust me, It might take 4 years, but 4 years down the road, we're going to sit in our backyards. When this is all said and done, we're going to drink a beer and we're going to look back on this and we'll have accomplished it. And then you got to bring the people in a room and break it down into smaller bits and lay it all out. And what are the steps that need to be done and delegate. So, so what we're going to talk about tonight, it's just one of those things. I mean, if it's sovereignty, if it's becoming a new state, if it's becoming our own nation, whatever it is, it's a project that can be,
that's right,
that can be accomplished.
And just so our viewers know, we're not going to come up with 100% solution tonight.
I never do, actually. I'm what's called I actually pride myself in being an 80-20 guy. It's the Pareto rule, which is you get 80% of the outcome you want from 20% of the effort. So focus on that. And then, what's the expression? Never let perfection get in the way of progress. Like, don't,
I think that is my biggest problem. Is I'm more of a perfectionist, and things have to be exactly the same way. And if that was the case, I wouldn't never get anything done, because it's always like, oh, I just give me a little more time and I'll get this through. And especially
perfection's necessary. I mean, I want my doctor to be more of a perfectionist.
Yes.
I probably want my mechanic to be more of a perfectionist, but
and I want air travel to be perfection.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But building my deck, if you're going to build me a deck, I mean, you can be 80%, maybe a little bit more, and then we'll fix the rest, as we go along. That kind of thing.
That's right. Yeah. So for the people, the handful of people that may not know who you are, and how you've amassed a following of 100,000+ people on Twitter, maybe just do a quick 30 seconds if you don't mind.
So I'm a retired engineer. I'm an Albertan. I had 35 years in the oil patch. COVID pretty much put that to an end for me. I was working on my own. I had my own company, and then because of COVID, I couldn't meet clients face to face, and then I slowly eased myself into retirement. Yeah. And then I needed something to do, so I got on Twitter. And Twitter just, I found a voice on Twitter because I kind of get to do some of that stuff. I get to talk about problems. I get to explain things that are complex and break it down into, actually, the old Twitter used to make me do a really good job at that, because in the old Twitter, remember, Kerry, the old Twitter where we had, what were we? We were limited to like 280 characters.
Well, 144 or something like that, I think.
Yeah, 144 at some point, right? So if you had to explain something really complex 5 years ago on Twitter, you had to I'd type it, and before you hit the send button, we weren't allowed to edit. Anyway, so I got really good at at minimizing my words to explain complex things. And so that's what I do on Twitter. So my name reflects that. I'm called MartyUpNorth because I'm an Albertan who spent most of his life working and living up north. I currently live down south in the Calgary area. Unacceptable is a tribute to Trudeau calling me unacceptable or fringe minority. Instead of fringe minority, I chose unacceptable. Yeah. And fact checker is what I do. I just have fun on Twitter every day, busting narratives.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
my
awesome.
tagline, right? I mean, I'm proud of that. It's strong and free. Yeah. It's Alberta strong and free. I consider myself an Albertan first, then a Canadian second.
Yeah, and Francophone, and you weren't born here. And I think we had that discussion when we were interviewing you with the APP, and you were born out in Ottawa, I believe.
Yes, I was not in Ottawa, but I was born in Ontario. I went to university in Ottawa. I hate to admit it, but I went to university in Ottawa.
That's right. Yeah, we talked about the pub Fathers and Sons.
Oh man, yeah, you got a good memory. Yeah. Wait a minute. How come you remember that? So what's your connection to Father and Son?
What's that?
You guys went there during the convoy, right?
No, actually, you know what? I believe that was closed at that point. But no, my ex went to law school at U of O, and so we would go there. And then, of course, we stayed at the Swiss Hotel, which and during the convoy, which I mean, it was kind of down the same street. I mean, it was probably a good mile or two down the street, and we never did venture out that way. But it was something that I looked up to see whether it was still operational, and it wasn't at that point. So.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, it was one of those places that you could go and you could just.
I'll never forget this. I mean, I must have eaten breakfast at Father and Sons like 1,000 times in my life, right? Like almost every day during university. It was $1.10, $1.10 for 2 eggs, 2 pieces of sausage, and toast. And now he'd nail you if you're allowed 1 little cup of coffee. If you had an extra coffee or an orange juice or any substitution, all of a sudden your breakfast was $6. But yeah.
That is funny. But that was the way things were back then. And things have definitely changed a lot. There's we ended up I've got a bunch of side stories, but I'm not going to bore everybody with them. But just in terms of dealing with all the restaurants and things that I do, even with my jukeboxes and video games and DJing and all that. It's amazing, and as well as our own bar, Outlaws Tap House, that was closed. It was amazing how much, like, we used to have wings for 10 cents, 5-cent wings. Yep. And then they went to 25 and everybody complained about how expensive they are. Now they're like almost $2 a wing, almost anywhere you go.
They were genuinely, I remember being a student in university, like every pub had a different night for a special, right? So all you can eat, because they wanted to attract the students, and we were poor. Like, so
that's right.
They would have all you can eat chicken wing night, like literally all you could eat.
Yeah.
But then the beer would be $3 or $4. So they get you on the beer and tacos and I miss those.
So I'm going to go off on that. I'm going to keep going on that tangent for a bit, because this is an interesting discussion. Just how the way things were, right? The way things were when we were growing up, and things have changed so much. Do you really think that if I'm going to jump things right here, if you really think that the prices of food and drink have been influenced from outside sources, outside our own provincial jurisdiction? Now, it could be through carbon tax. It could just be, bringing stuff in through the states, blah, blah, blah. Is there any way that if we were our own sovereign province or nation, do you think we could ever get back to those prices again?
No.
We're done.
Well, no, we're not done that. I mean, a lot of the costs over the years that have increased is seldom because of lack of something, right? I mean, food's an example. Food is way more plentiful than when you and I were kids, right?
Oh, yes, and it should be dirt cheap.
It should be dirt cheap. Yeah, absolutely. So it should be dirt cheap, but it's been artificially inflated because everything around us is inflated, and that all comes back to our governments. I mean, our currency that we use is no longer backed by gold, right? No, so we have this paper currency, and the paper currency, we don't want to get into a million details, but it only works if there's inflation. Like a piece of paper printed by the government has to be worth a little bit less in the future so that they give you a new piece of paper. And so inflation is a necessary evil. And people say 1 or 2% kind of thing makes the whole system work. Sometimes it gets out of control, and because governments do really stupid things like we've seen in the last few years. But anyways, so to your point, no, it's I don't think it will ever come back down to those days.
No. And that's a shame too, because of course, then the argument that a lot of people have in terms of how they hate the current government and is, well, then we should just raise the minimum wage. And as soon as people say that, it's like, do you not remember the situation that even happened in Fort Mac, where they did raise the wage for people that were living in Fort Mac, but they still tried to keep the coffee the same amount of like $1 or $2? It doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
I don't even know why politicians still entertain ideas like that. I mean, if as an example, just today, it might not have gone out broadly speaking, but I registered to receive the newsletters from the Liberals. So I got Chrystia Freeland's newsletter today. Maybe it went out to the populace, and it was her plan, right? And in her plan, if I'm elected leader, I'm going to put a control on food prices. You can't do that, Chrystia. Like, you can't do that, because if the avocados in Mexico, if that farmer had to spend $1 on water and seeds and fertilizer, and then he had to spend $1 to send it to us here, and the store had to put 50 cents on it, and that avocado ends up being $2.50. Yeah. If Chrystia Freeland says that the store won't be able to charge us more than $2.25 for that avocado, you know what is going to happen, right? The guy in Mexico is not going to send it to us. He'll send it to some other market. So. Yeah.
Or we don't get the avocado, or the other option is the federal government subsidizes it, and then who ends up paying for it?
Everybody who doesn't even want avocados. Yeah, because I'll be happy if the avocado is $2.50. I'll say forget it. I don't need an avocado that bad. But yeah, the government will subsidize it, and even though I don't want one anymore, I'll end up paying for it.
That's right.
So yeah, they actually this this whole week, this whole discussion on, not this week, this past 3 weeks, these discussions on tariffs and stuff like that. For me, there's one big concerning point is that Canadians are ill-informed when it comes to economics and
Yes,
how,
they are.
you know, it's just sad, and how easily they're swayed. I mean, we're seeing in the polls this week, people are saying, Marty, you can't believe the polls, because there's polls that showed that the Liberals were closing the gap with the Conservatives. I'm sorry, folks, but one poll, I would say maybe there's just an outlier, but it's been 3 or 4 or 5 polls nowadays, and then you can see it. And we do our own little impromptu polls online, and the you know, Trump has scared Eastern Canadians in particular, and when they're scared, they're easily enticed to go back to voting Liberals. And so the Liberals are temporarily, I mean, you know, once they select their leader, then that poor leader will have a couple of weeks to you know, to sit in Parliament, and then hopefully we get our common sense back.
Yeah. One of the problems I've got with polls anyways is no matter what kind of poll it is, they're always skewed. And so here's a perfect example is if you decided to put a poll under your Twitter account, you're going to get everybody that follows you. Now, it could be, you know, you're skewed right away. You've got 80% supporters, 20% that are trolls. They're going to try and influence that poll. And so we found that even through some of the polls that were, you know, saying, you know, how is Danielle Smith doing? And it depends on where that is. If it's on CTV and it's headed or it's based out of the East, you can for sure, without even looking at it, know that that's not going to be a very positive poll in her direction. But yet, if you have something that's here and maybe more independence-minded through Western Standard or somebody, you're going to get a better skew. So I'm not even sure how polls, and we talked about this before.
No.
I've never had a poll.
You're right. I mean, so for instance, the latest poll today was won by a polling firm called Leger, right? And so Leger did one. It was done on the 9th of February. And I went and looked at it. So a couple of things you mentioned. You know, don't quote me exactly, but they called 1,500 people, and it says right there in the poll that they called like 430 Francophones. Well, obviously, it's already skewed because Francophones make up 12% of Canada's population. So if 30% of your respondents in your poll, that's already a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then the other thing they did in the poll, which I found really disingenuous, is they asked a question like, you know, who would you vote for today? You know, Liberal or Conservative. Then they asked, who would you vote for if Carney was the prime minister, and who would or the leader, and who would you vote for if Freeland? But they didn't offer a question with Ruby or with Frank or with Karina Gould. So right away, then they put this thing that says if Carney was the leader tomorrow, he has a better chance of winning against Poilievre. It's like, yeah, but you didn't even ask. You know, you didn't.
The others, no.
Yeah, or they don't even ask you, like, you know, what's your voter intention? You get 4 choices. Well, it's always Liberal, Conservative, NDP, and Green. So if you're a PPC supporter, then they're not even on the question, and so that's not an accurate poll.
Well,
by the way, congratulations to Vicky.
Yes.
She secured the PPC nomination.
Watching.
Yeah. Good for you, Vicky.
Be the PPC candidate for Alberta Yellowhead. No, I forget what it's actually called, but Yellowhead, right? So is it?
It's Yellowhead.
Alberta? Yeah, it's just Yellowhead. So, but for federal. So yeah, we're going to be driving around all through. Banff.
All along the Rockies, actually. Yellowhead's a very nice riding. It's the one that's squeezed between the BC border, the Rockies, and Highway 22.
And the Cowboy Trail. Exactly. Yeah, you're right.
So you're going to go to beautiful places like Nordegg and Rocky Mountain House. And Yeah.
So I know she'll be watching. So that's good. Thanks for letting her know that. And it's you know, I haven't really been involved on that side in terms of federal, because to me, it still ends up being, how can we make change municipally? How can we make change provincially? But there is definitely a component, because no matter what we do, even if we decided to become our own country right now, there's still amount of time before that takes place, and it could be easily 1 or 2 federal elections before I think that happens, right?
Oh, I made a pretty detailed post on that last week. It would take at least 10 to 15 years, maybe even 20.
Yes. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So we are definitely in this for the long haul. So I guess we are professional podcasters now because we've got 10 or 20 years of doing this. Chris just happened to pop in, so I'm going to bring him on and see what's going on with his life. How you doing there, Chris?
I'm doing well, and how are you, Kerry and Marty?
Good. You didn't miss much. We've been just reminiscing and shooting the breeze for a while, holding off on the big heavy topics.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. Sorry, I was late. I had my son at a basketball game today. It went a little later than I anticipated. So
that's totally fine. You kind of look like you have a bit of a grumpy face. So anything going on?
Why would you say that?
Ooh, is that a nice dark beer or is that a Coca-Cola?
No, that's a wine.
No, I'm old now. It's wine.
Oh, okay.
It's actually a bottle of wine that Dennis and Lana Moldry bought me. I figured I'd try it.
Very nice. Good.
Yeah.
So yeah, we we briefly just talked about some of the things about kind of what's very glossed over what's going on in the world right now in terms of Trudeau proroguing government, and Marty's put a couple of things up on his Twitter page and all that, but we haven't actually gone into anything specifically. I don't know if you want to start the conversation with that, or
we can cover all of the current events in like 3 minutes.
Oh really? Yeah, there's nothing going on. So
no, I mean it's just a normal everyday run of the mill year as far as I can see so far.
Yeah. Parliament is prorogued. Trudeau's running around in Paris. We're on the verge of a trade war. We got a leadership race. We got the NDP making weird promises. We just appointed a fentanyl czar.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so a great one too. Like his CV looks amazing.
Yeah, totally normal week. Normal.
Yeah. Oh, don't forget the asteroid. Of course, there's the asteroid. Throw that in the mix too.
Yeah.
Well, it's certainly exciting, and I said this before. There is no shortage to content for any kind of podcast that anybody wants to do these days. Like it is absolutely nuts, and it's almost impossible to kind of put your finger on one thing that we should be talking about or working towards. I default, of course, Marty, you know this, Kerry, you know this, to Alberta independence, because all of these paths seem to lead to a referendum on independence, no matter what we're talking about doing. So that's what's kind of kept me grounded, so to speak. Otherwise, my hair would be falling out faster than Kerry's.
Well, and to me, so I think we're all on the same page. I said it before you joined. I'm an Albertan first and a Canadian second. I'm definitely on the record as saying that I think Confederation after 157 years is a failed experiment, and I don't see a way out of it. With the usual chit chat of reforming Parliament and this and that, like Senate, no, and to me, the events of the last couple of months have actually solidified that. I mean, look at the threat of a trade war with the U.S. wasn't sufficient to bring the country together. Some politicians tried to make this appeal to, we're all on Team Canada, and it didn't work because the threat of Trump is not the same across the country, and people wanted to respond to it differently. So we couldn't. So even when we're supposedly confronted with an existential threat, we don't unify. And then in that whole process, this whole thing of Team Canada was hilarious because Alberta wasn't on Team Canada for a while, even though everybody was suddenly screaming, "Hey, we should have diversified the economy. We should have built pipelines. We should have done that." And then
Trump, we never said anything like that.
10
years ago.
Yeah, that's all news, right, to everybody. And then Trump backs off temporarily, says, "Okay, I'll give you 30 days before and then I'll reconsider." So then they go and interview, for instance, the premier of Quebec and say, "Okay, a week ago you're all in favor of pipelines. Now, how do you feel about pipelines?" Well, as soon as the threat was gone, what did the premier of Quebec say? there's no appetite for pipelines in this country. And then we're right back to where we were. So, and to me, the threat of Trump had some potential negative consequences, but I being a glass half full guy, I think it exposed the rest of Canada for the hypocrites they are, and it made me think that I'm rambling a little bit, but even today when people say we're talking about the polls and it looks like the Liberals are closing that gap with the Conservatives. Boy, if the Liberals steal an election from us again and go back into power, perfect. That just makes my job that much easier.
I've said that.
Exactly.
Like, can you imagine if Trudeau wins again?
Yeah,
we'll be pulling the pin, and no one's even going to care. It's just going to go.
Except it won't be Trudeau; it'll be Carney.
Oh,
it would be like that much worse, right?
Yeah.
But Marty, what you mentioned?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say Carney is, people, when Trudeau first got elected, I was worried about Trudeau. I honestly was, because, back in 2015, this guy gets elected and I'm like, oh shit, like he's going to be in power for 20 years. I honestly thought he would. Luckily, he's so narcissistic and he screwed it up, and now, he's in trouble. Yeah, I think Carney is worse than Trudeau. I mean, if Carney gets in, he's going to steal elections for the next 20 years, and he ain't going to screw it up the way Trudeau did. He's going to.
He's way, way smarter, more seasoned, more experienced. Yeah. So, Marty, you mentioned Team Canada, and every time I think about this whole, the premiers all coming together and they're making this plan to fight back against Trump. First of all, that's the most ridiculous thing ever. Fight against the USA. Okay, good luck. But it reminds me of a South Park episode, and where they're trying to get something done, so they just sacrifice Kenny to get the thing done. And Alberta is Kenny, like, yay, we're Team Canada. Let's just throw Alberta to the flames, and we'll win. No, we're not. We're just gonna. This is the most. Canada is a divided nation. It always has been. Your comment about it being a failed experiment is completely bang on. And, I at one time I kind of thought like, oh, I'm sad about this. This is a depressing thing. It's just not working. But the reality is, it doesn't have to be depressing. Okay, we tried this. It didn't work. Maybe we should try something different and accomplish the same goal. Like the goal was, from the West perspective, work together. We're stronger together. We don't have barriers for trade. And we prosper. Well, we have the barriers interprovincially. It's more difficult to trade province to province than it is with the United States.
Yeah, isn't that sad?
Yeah, it's not an equitable relationship. It doesn't work for anyone other than the Central Canada, right? Which I imagine might have been the goal in the first place. But it's just an opportunity to do something better, really.
Yeah, and for some people, it will be an emotional attachment, which will be hard to let go, and for others, it's just the fear of the unknown, right? I mean, and that's just that's human emotion for a lot of people. I mean, we see that a lot. As an example, I'm surprised that people still resist the idea of an Alberta pension plan, even though I could show you like demonstrably that
easily.
We'd be way better off. And then you go, well, yeah, people are it's just emotions at this point. They're just scared, or and it's weird. Emotions are like, do I love Canada? Sure, I love Canada. And I'll go to, I'll cheer, put on my Canada sweater when I go watch the Olympics. But then when I go watch the Bonspiel, the curling Bonspiel, there is a Team Canada there. But then I'm wearing my Team Alberta sweater, and I'm cheering for Alberta. And I go, yeah, well, that would. Like I'll get over that emotional aspect. Like if Alberta became its own state, its own country, or its own whatever, like I won't mourn Canada. It won't bother me for very long.
We'd still have the Flames. We'd still have the Oilers, guaranteed, right?
Do we have to keep the Flames?
What's that? Do we?
I'm asking for a friend. Do we have to keep the Flames? Is that a thing?
Yeah, we need a battle of Alberta.
Yeah,
we still need
we definitely have to.
We need a battle of Alberta. Yeah.
I'll give you that one. But you know what you know what the best way to deal with emotions is? Fight them with different emotions. Here's an idea. So our friend Nikki Hurley, thank you, Nikki, for being in the comments every single podcast we do. That's fantastic. We love you being here. He mentioned earlier end equalization. 100%. I want to end equalization too. You know, one of the things we could do with half the amount of the equalization money that we send to Ottawa, for which we receive zero back, we could, using half of it, we could get rid of everybody's transmission distribution charges on their power bill tomorrow. Boom.
Yeah.
Just like that.
You're right.
That's an emotional reaction to a good policy, right? What do you mean my power bill that we've been complaining about for 15 years has gone back to reasonable again? That's what independence and sovereignty looks like. Maybe I'm not really such a team Canada. Maybe I believe in prosperity and a future for my children, right?
Yeah, you could lower the retirement age to 63. You could give everybody a slightly bigger retirement pension.
With the Alberta pension plan, of course. Yeah.
There's a lot. Boy, don't get me started on amount of wasted money, not just in Alberta, but federally, and what we could do with wasted money. It's just shocking how much we waste money. Shocking.
So let's have this bit of a discussion that says, okay, we've all decided that this is the way we're going to go. We are going to become independent, or at least have that referendum. What steps would be required for us to actually bring that together? And I know we've talked about it through APP, but I'm more thinking about there are certain steps that we would need to do as a province before we say, you know what, there are some of us that like the 51st state idea. There's some of us that like to stay within Canada. There's some of us that like to just say, no, we're pulling the pin and we're leaving as a province, or maybe we leave as a group of provinces, Saskatchewan, maybe northern BC, etc. So we all decide that, yes, we're going to go ahead and do this referendum. What happens then?
Well, I'll tackle that bit before we do the referendum. And so, first of all, the referendum, I grew up in Quebec.
Yes.
So, and I lived through one referendum when I was a kid, and then there was another one within 20 years. But I would say referendums are probably generational, once every generation. So, if we're going to have a referendum, you don't get to have another one 3 years later, 4 years later. So you got to be very well prepared for that first referendum. I think here in Alberta, before we consider having a referendum, we need to make sure our house is a little bit more in order, and we need a couple of things. We need to look like we're sovereign before we even, because a referendum is it gives us permission to negotiate with Canada or whoever to separate, but we need to not look like we're bluffing, right? And that goes back to what we often call the Alberta firewall, or the we need our own tax collection agency. And people say we already have one because we collect business taxes. It's not enough, right? We need
kind of do.
Yeah, we kind of do. So we need to beef up our tax collection abilities. We would need to beef up our policing, like we have the sheriffs and stuff like that, but we would need something like Ontario or Quebec has, the Ontario OPP or the QPP. We would need an Alberta provincial police, which we're close, right? Again, we're very close. And then, beef up our constitution, beef up our, perhaps our Alberta pension plan, a couple of things. But at the bare minimum, we need a tax collection agency and a good, solid police force, and a few other things to show that we're serious, that we can act on our own. And by the way, and your viewers know this, right? What we're proposing to do for ourselves, that's what Quebec did, right? Quebec did that in the 60s. Yeah. They prepared themselves for that referendum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then you do the referendum. Sorry, Chris, what?
We are working on some of those things, like the Alberta pension plan. That is a big one. That's absolutely key. You mentioned, Marty, tax collection. We already have the structure in place. We just need to bolster it a little bit. It's got to be a more robust system. We need to take control of immigration, which people are screaming about anyway. Make sure that whoever we're bringing into our province is to the benefit and contributing to the overall prosperity of the province. We need to take control of employment insurance, which we overfund by over $1 billion a year. And I'm missing one, Kerry. Oh, police. Yeah, you already mentioned that, Marty. And Alberta has began giving their sheriffs more responsibilities and power so that they're just like our CMP. So, you know, you're right. Once we get these things, once we take control of the things that we already have constitutional jurisdiction in, it's an easy transition. We're already doing the things, and we only have to do a couple little minor, you know, painful things after.
Yeah, in the back of our head, we need to be, you know, we need something to back up. Even we'll probably use the Canadian dollar at first, but let's say we choose to go with an Alberta dollar, then you would realize we need either a mint or something else. We'd need to think about our own little militia instead of maybe an army, things like that. But yeah, so you get that, you start looking like you're acting sovereign, you got your own strength, and then you're in a position to then you put it to your people, right, in a referendum. Are you in favor of negotiating with Ottawa as a starting point to be either completely separate or some sort of union, and then you go from there. And then the number's not that big, right? What did we establish we need? We need 600,000 signatures.
Yeah, we need I think it's 20
to trigger the referendum.
Yeah, so 600,000. Yeah.
Well, actually, that's not true. We don't need those signatures to have the referendum. Our government can propose to put a referendum on the table anytime they want.
Oh, they could do it. Yeah,
You elect to get it done. I'm just trying to clarify for the viewers there. For us to make it happen, we need the 600,000 signatures, and that's what the Alberta Votes Yes thing is all about. To register your intention.
You're right. Yes. If somebody pissed off Danielle Smith enough, kicked her off,
she could do it tomorrow.
She could go right tomorrow and say, "Here's Bill, whatever," and I'm proposing a referendum. Hell, she could skip the referendum. She could almost go right to instead of the Sovereignty Act, just go with the real Sovereignty Act.
Well, likewise, she could do that with the pension plan as well, and just because
all
she
those
basically
5 things, every one of them.
She said right at the beginning, or right in September when they were proposing it, they said, "You know what? We're going to take a step back. We're going to let the province decide on what was going on," and they kind of fiddle-faddled all the way through that, which is why we're in the situation where we are. There's a small group of us through the Alberta First Pension Group that are trying to influence and basically educate Albertans so that they understand that the pension is it's the low-lying fruit. It's all, we just need it to get done. And then if that happens, then hey, taxation should happen right away. We'll be in a better position for employment insurance, and then of course we can continue on from there. So
I'm going to touch on this comment here.
Yeah, go ahead.
This comment here. So stop with the referendum BS. We need to place a constitutional convention. Folks, if you want a constitutional convention in this country, the fastest path to do that, actually the only path, is a referendum on Alberta independence. That is it. The criteria for a constitutional convention in this country are almost unattainable. You need
what do you think they mean by that?
So I know
they want to fix the Constitution.
Oh yeah.
So a lot of people that have contacted Chris and myself, and probably you, have said, "Have you seen the Canada the Myth video?" Right, and it's the one that looks like a PowerPoint presentation. Talks about
the events of 1877, 1908, all the subsequent events.
I mean, it's brilliant. It's probably 100% true. I'm not negating any
or 90,
of that, but there are certain steps in order to do that. And of course, one of the solutions it says is to make sure that the provinces do their own constitutional convention and
Marty,
so
did you see?
I just want to add one little bit. I hear those videos all the time, and this is what I tell people. It doesn't matter what the rules were. Too much time has passed, and we live in a country that is based on common law. So once something happens and you let it happen and you don't fight it, then it doesn't matter what, it becomes the law, right? As an example, Trudeau implemented the Emergency Measures Act and we barely fought it, and the courts had a little bit of argument. It's too late, folks. It's now become precedent. The next prime minister 10 years from now can say, Trudeau did it once, I'm doing it again. So that's the same argument with the Constitution and this and that. People say Quebec didn't sign it. They didn't freaking sign it, but it's been 30 years. So now because
the Supreme Court ruled on that.
Yeah, so at this point, it's a done deal. They're in Confederation. So, anyways, what were you going to say, Chris? I'm sorry.
Well, I'll just, in line with what you're saying, Marty, the way I explain it is a country isn't a thing. It's not tangible. It's something that exists in the minds of those who inhabit. So we in this country, the majority of people, we decide this is our country, these are our laws, these are our rules, these are our jails, these are our police with guns, this is our army, and that's the way it is. And if you want to fight that or push back against it, then you're basically going against the majority of 40 million or 44 million people, right?
Yeah.
So that's
I
agree. It doesn't matter anymore.
No, it's like it's another example. I mean, 4 weeks ago, Trudeau prorogued Parliament, and everybody said, "Well, he can't do that." It's like, folks, he just did.
But he did. Yeah,
he did. So he did, and unless somebody succeeds this week in going to court and having the court say you can't do that, if the court says you can't do that, then that'll be a precedent. And if the court says no, he did what he did, then guess what, folks? There's not a special rule book somewhere with all the rules of the country. It's just a bunch of traditions. Actually, that's the best word. Most of our country is actually based on traditions.
Tradition.
Yeah.
So what happened, in my opinion, at least from what I've gathered, it was actually Trudeau Sr. that closed the loophole on the whole idea that we're not actually confederated. We're not a federation. Wasn't done correctly. I did a podcast where we were watching a video from 1982, and we were watching what was the Irish guy's name? Webster. He was interviewing Elmer Knudsen. Now, Elmer Knudsen, he was the president of WestFed, and he was saying we're not actually federated. And he brought up a lot of the things that were in the Myth is Canada, including that we didn't really have a constitution, because a constitution is by the people on how government can interact with the people. But our original BNA Act was Britain saying, this is how we're going to interact with you. It wasn't proper. Elmer said, we need to do it ourselves. We need to federate. We need a constitution. And he
should have done it back then.
Provinces to start it. But in the meantime, Trudeau brought the Constitution home, repatriated it, and now I believe that ship has sailed. So we can flog that dead horse as much as we want, or we can get on the shiny other white one. Right? Well, I guess it could be black too, because it's got to be.
It's in our backyard.
That's a zebra. We could get on the shiny zebra that's standing right beside that dead horse, and we could go. And so that's what we should be focusing on.
Yeah, that'd be like somebody telling me, hey, Marty, you didn't sign the wedding papers on your wedding night 25 years ago. So technically you and Karen aren't married. Okay, good luck telling my wife that we're not married. She's going to say, no, we've been, so.
That actually happened to me. I'm not even kidding you.
That's for a different podcast. Actually, this whole Canada, comparing Canada to a relationship or a marriage is it's a very good analogy. People like hockey, but in this case, Alberta is an abused spouse who's just been treated like shit, and we need to get the hell out of this relationship.
The great Canadian milk cow.
We've talked about, how we were kind of not even lured into this back in 1905. We were just basically told as a province to join. And, back then we were all worried about what are we going to eat
freezing to death in the winter,
almost like now. And things just happen. And now we're, 122 years later. We got to figure out 23 years later. We got to figure out.
Most people living here in those days wouldn't have even known it was happening. Think about it, right? Like,
nor you're living in.
You're living in Peace River in 1899.
You might get one newspaper a month.
Yeah, and then suddenly somebody says, "Hey, we're part of this thing called Confederation." Oh, okay. Does that change the price I get for my wheat? No. Well, then I don't care.
They're too busy surviving to bother with these things, right? We're just kind of roped into it. I really like the comments. The comments are great in this podcast tonight. So thanks, folks. One thing that I see coming up quite a bit is comments about the different provinces should join together and do these things. And I cannot stress this enough. There is a legal pathway under our current laws in this country, the current Articles of Confederation, that allow a province to secede from Confederation. It's outlined in the Clarity Act. It says exactly what has to happen, how it happens, and basically it says, the referendum on independence with a clear question, clear answer may result in secession from Confederation. Well, that also means it may not. So all these people who are saying we should join with Saskatchewan, 100% agree. Western Canada would be a great union, but the first thing that has to happen, at least according to our laws in this Confederation, each province must be independent first. You
Right.
can't have 2 or 3 provinces say, we're all seceding under this referendum. It doesn't work like that. Provinces are sovereign in their futures. So we choose our future, they choose their future, and then afterwards we could decide, do we want to work together? Same thing with being a 51st state. The United States cannot absorb a non-independent entity. They cannot do it. We
Well,
can
they can
only do
in
that
one way.
if we're independent. Well, they could with
They
the
can.
military, but that's a complete different thing. And
Yeah,
that just doesn't happen these days, you know?
Yeah, because to your point, like, you know, if Alberta votes, has a positive referendum, and so does Saskatchewan, each province then has to negotiate independently the
Yes.
terms of secession, because each province has different debts and different agreements, right? There's First Nations, there's national parks, there's infrastructure, there's all sorts of things. But and to your point, joining after that, you're independent. Then you make an application to the U.S. if you want to join the U.S. And then all those things we did to become sovereign, we have to do them again, and we have to adjust them. Like, we have a constitution. A provincial constitution is inadequate to become a state, because the states have their own model of what a constitution looks like, and fundamental rights. And that's the other thing in the U.S. Constitution. Any group that any state that joins on an equal footing to the other states that are already there. Mm-hmm. So gun laws and things like that, they're automatic. We would have to adopt a lot of things that the Americans already have. We couldn't keep some of our old, some of our institutions, we couldn't even keep, because the other states, they go, no, that's not how it works, man. You guys are going to have elected judges like the rest of us. You cannot have appointed judges. It's things like that. So that's why I said at the beginning of the show before you got here, Chris, it's achievable. We just need to break it down in pieces. But I would say, as a step one, being sovereign or appearing sovereign within Canada, that's achievable in the next 5-6 years.
100%.
With the right premier who wants to make that happen. You know,
and I have an idea, Marty. Once you're done, I want to fill you in.
Yeah. So to make us look like Quebec, that can happen quickly. A referendum and leaving Canada, and as a step one, being an independent, that's probably 15, 20 years. And then joining the US, you join next as a territory and then perhaps as a state. I don't think that's going to be in my lifetime, but I could be wrong.
And likewise,
we
could do all the laws that the states have. If we've already gone and done that process so that we're our own republic or an independent, then all we would say is, we like this stuff that the U.S. have done. Let's bring that into our own constitution. And then, so what's the point of joining the U.S. at that point?
That's there is.
Well, I'm there with you. I mean, I'd rather. Well, there's a couple of advantages to joining the U.S. Right? You get you get
a giant military.
A giant military, 50 other partners who come and help you, and then you perhaps get the American dollar. But then is Alberta as a state closer to Washington than it is to Ottawa? Not physical distance, but in terms of attention it gets. I dare say we
only
might
in the Senate. Only in the Senate, right?
Yeah,
that's the saving grace with the United States, is that each state has 2 senators. So a lot of things, they're made or broken in the Senate. But Marty, what if I told you we could actually accelerate this process? We can make this happen quicker. I mean, we don't have a government right now that seems to have much of an appetite for making big waves. I mean, they're making some small waves, but the Alberta pension plan, that's a big wave. Taking control of immigration, all those 5 things, those are big waves. We can do that, and we can do it a lot quicker. What if we had 30 or, I don't know, let's say 65 Alberta first, sovereign Alberta minded individuals who believed in fixing the things that we've identified are wrong in the last few years, specifically like the COVID judicial review. We need that for sure. We need to take control of all of our sovereign jurisdiction of the Constitution. What if we had 65 people that agree to that, and we put them as nominees for every position, MLA position in this province? And we sent 50 or 60 good men and good women to the legislature that had those things in mind. Now, all of a sudden, say Danielle Smith is still the premier or somebody else, it doesn't matter. Now, all of a sudden, you have a very large group of people who are pushing, along with CA boards, along with the provincial board of the party, pushing in the same direction, and inevitably those things would happen.
Yeah. If you proposed that to me about 3-4 years ago, I would have been more on I would have been right there with you. The events of the last 3 years, I'm still digesting the events of the last 3 years, which is because what I would have said to you back then is, first of all, I would have said, well, how about we just make sure we take control of the party and change the party from within rather than start a new party. I would have said that. But now in hindsight, I'm like, changing parties from within is almost impossible. So yeah, you got to do what you're doing. You got to change a party. But then I'm still worried about the 65 individuals have to be led by a premier at some point, and the premier has to be on board, because the darn premiers and prime ministers in this freaking country have so much power that even when their whole party seems to be behind them, they still go and do their own thing. You know what I'm saying? So,
but we haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen a whole party behind them. Like right now, I can probably name off 7 or 8 that are just rotten apples in the bucket.
Yes,
I mean, we did take over a lot of different things, right? With party, and maybe a few MLAs were replaced. But the reality is we left a lot of rotten apples in the bucket. And you know what happens when you leave one rotten apple in the box? It spreads.
We left 11. We left 11 in the bucket, so we need to get
yes, exactly.
Yes, I agree.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I see where we could fine tune this, but fundamentally, I agree. You need to put 65 people in place, including a premier, somebody with a lot. I mean, doing the changes we are suggesting, it's just political will, right? Look at Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what Trump did, right? The guy comes into power and signs 90 executive orders, man. And he's going to be wrong on some of them, but who cares? He's got political will, and then he'll fix it. And that's what we're missing in Alberta in particular, is political will. We haven't had political will. You guys were here during King Ralph, right? I mean, Ralph had political will. Like, and the will to do it, and the will to put up with the shit that comes with doing it, because it's nonstop, right? He was attacked. He was attacked. Yeah. But he was not
necessarily well liked at the time. There were lots of groups that didn't like him, but then when you look back on it, it's like, oh, King Ralph.
Right? Yeah. Oh no! At the time, people were chastising him. They were saying that everything he was going to do was going to destroy the province, and I'm sure he was getting hate mail and not hate emails. Back in those days, you sent the premier a letter with a stamp. But no, I'd love to see that. I think we're getting close to that. We're if the province. Well, let me backtrack a little bit. There is still one obstacle. I mean, the 65 people are there, and you still need to put the 65. The 65 people need to win. The danger that we keep seeing is, even if we have 65, only 40, 45 end up in the legislature. The other side, the NDP, for whatever reason, keep succeeding in electing people in this province. And I don't know. That's another problem we're going to have to solve.
You know how we solve that? We somehow get you as the Doge Czar. That's how we do that. I'm not even kidding you. Imagine if you went in and you started looking at the finances of this province and how much money moves through unions, who gets paid, how the union bosses are weaponizing unions against government, like the stuff you would uncover.
No. You
corruption.
You've said it correctly. The way we solve it is we bring government back to a manageable size. I mean, we
shine a light on it.
Yeah. The people who are voting NDP are fundamentally people who work for the government. So you shine a light on it. You eliminate the waste. You shrink the government, which takes a lot of the votes away. And you do one other thing too, is which Saskatchewan did, is you decentralize the government away from one place. Right now it's all in Edmonton. It's too much in Edmonton. So you shrink it, and then you move it out. You put the energy ministry in Fort McMurray, you put the agriculture ministry in Grand Prairie, you put tourism in Canmore, and you move people around.
That does make sense. Yeah.
So that there's never that huge concentration. The Edmonton Strathcona should never exist. Like, there should never be a place that is so socialist that it'll always vote socialist. That's how you do. Yeah. But that you do
absolutely.
with brute force, or you do it secretly, or I like what you said. You shine light on it, man. Like, look,
Well,
nobody's arguing with what Elon and the government's doing in the U.S., right? Nobody's arguing.
Oh,
with
the
that.
beneficiaries of the corruption sure are arguing.
Sure,
it's hilarious.
Yeah.
They're
but
losing
the average American, if you say, are you really happy about sending $20 million to Iraq for a gay Sesame Street show? No. Like, I said the same thing today. Our governments are so big that they become an entity in and of themselves, and they just spend money because they're big and because they have money. And if Canadians knew just how bad, like we've been actually, Doge has had an impact on Canada. We've been exposing it all week long, right? There's
and people are calling for it.
Yeah. Canada needs Doge. Yeah, absolutely. Annette said that.
If we shone a light on that kind of stuff, I mean, we would get those NDP voters. There are some legitimately good people who vote NDP because they believe NDP is the only way to get better healthcare, better education, better social services. They must vote NDP. But if you show those voters the truth about what they're actually doing and how they're voting for the opposite of what they want when they allow that type of stuff to happen, they would change their vote in a heartbeat. Those are the ones that we can win. The other ones, they're just going to curl up in their basement and cry.
Yeah, and actually you bring up a nice point. Like last week, there was a poll in Alberta. There hadn't been a poll in Alberta since July of last year. So I think it was the NDP who commissioned a poll, and there was a poll. And I was surprised that the poll still showed the number one concern of Albertans to be healthcare. So solve that problem. Like if I've always said, like, to Danielle, like, if you solve healthcare, then you take away that lever from the NDP. They won't be able to say, well, we want better healthcare. Give them the damn better healthcare, and then they won't. Then they can't complain.
Well, I think she's trying to do that, but it seems to be a lot of.
That's a mess, eh? Alberta health is a mess. Wow, even this week, I couldn't figure out. I couldn't get to the bottom of what happened last week. Like, it does look sus, right? When you fire the whole board a second time in 2 years, oof, like, what's going on there?
I thought that was weird too, until I realized that kind of is aligned with the timeline in breaking up the AHS into the different departments. I didn't understand it at first, and then I realized, okay, well, we're kind of at that time now where we don't really need that board, and now we're supposed to be divesting the services into different groups with different leadership and different boards. I think it was more than that, but again, I've been getting letters from the NDP for a week straight about how Danielle Smith needs to resign. She's got to step aside. She's so corrupt. And I'm like, why? What is the thing that she did? And nobody can tell me. Maybe there is something, and I'd like to know, but I haven't seen it.
Though. It's so complex that Nenshi probably can't put it into one email.
Oh man, Nenshi can't look straight ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I like. What's bad about firing the whole board? Like, the worst thing I can say about firing the whole board, this is the worst thing I could say, is that, well, you hired them and you fired them, so therefore the worst thing I could say is you made a bad choice. You had bad judgment in hiring them in the first place. I that's a criticism that I could lay on her. But beyond that, I don't know what the criticism is, that you fired a whole board.
I have a major criticism. Major criticism for Danielle Smith. Her communications team sucks ass. They're terrible. They are so terrible. I mean, I'm watching the NDP completely walk all over our government and our party forever, and I rarely hear a peep out of them. I rarely hear anything challenging, and I hear this going on around me, and it boggles my mind.
It's one of her blind spots. She surrounds herself with friends, and you can't do that. Like, you gotta have somebody who can truly be there to spot, to call out when you're being blind to something. You can't surround in politics. I guess it's so easy to surround yourself with yes men. I worked in industry, man. I worked at I liked a team. I like a team of people who will tell me, Marty, you're full of shit. Like, that's perfect, right? Like, if I'm in a meeting and I'm getting gung-ho and I'm all pumped up, and then I turn and I'll mention his name. I won't give his last name, but I used to have a guy named Gord on my team. And then I'd look at Gord and I'd see the body language. I'm like, okay, sorry, I'm believing my own bullshit. What did I miss, Gord? And then Gord would say, well, you forgot this, this, and this. I'm like, okay, thank you. Yes, thank you. You know, like surrounding yourself with yes men when you're trying to advance projects and solutions, that doesn't work, man. That's bad.
And
I think
obviously the
Danielle,
advisors that she has are not doing their job.
no,
Right? They really are yes men. They're
Some
not
are.
advising.
Some are.
some are,
Some-
but and she's got better advisors than Kenny. Kenny
Oh, yeah.
surrounded himself with like, you know, his old buddies from Ontario. They didn't even know what was going on. But yeah. We're not going to pick on Danielle too much for the next, you know, it's been noticeable. I backed off on her a little bit lately, and she's got some popularity and I like what she's doing. And, you know, if she's Team Alberta and she's, you know, the enemy of my enemies is my friend or whatever they are. So if she's not entirely popular with Trudeau and the other premiers, then that makes
It's a good thing.
That's a good thing. I'll support her that way. Absolutely. But make no mistakes,
Yeah,
folks. I have my ulterior motives too, which is I'm driving towards an independent Alberta. Like,
So
I
here's
think that's
another
where all of
question
us
about-
want to go.
yeah.
Another question about the independent Alberta. So of course we all know that 2030 and what things are going to happen and then, and or at least that's the timeline, 2050. Here we're already talking about things that are going to take place, you know, 5-10 years down the road. So my question would be, are we running out of time on any of these solutions?
No. You're talking the big, like 2030.
The WEF, we're all going to be
that
EVs, and we're all going to have
Trump did us a big
Cybertruck
favor
today.
there, man. Trump is the defunding.
And I agree. I think
Yeah,
he did a hell of a
He's
job
castrated
coming in those
is
first
what he
few
did.
days. Yeah.
Yep. They're begging
Look-
now. They're begging for funding.
Absolutely. And look at what happened again 2 weeks ago. Trump attended the World Economic Forum by conference, right? He didn't go in person. And
That's right.
And he gave a speech. And in his speech, he was black and white, like, I'm securing my border. I'm becoming, I'm kickstarting my economy. I'm drilling. I'm imposing tariffs on everybody else. I'm taking care of crime. I'm putting America first. And rather than lambaste him and try to crucify him, everybody suddenly started asking him quiet questions like, when can you make this happen? Can you send us the LNG? How do we make sure we stay on board with you guys and stay, you know, maintain our preferred client status? And then you realize that the people at the World Economic Forum, they jump ship right away. Like, and some of them, like, it's the flavor of the month. They're like, okay, we're going to do net zero. It's the popular thing. And some of them deep down realize this is fashionable. And deep down, they realize this didn't work. And they're like, we need a way out. Trump comes along. He's giving them all a way out. Like, instantly, you're going to have half the guys go, oh, thank God, I can finally drop the bullshit, right? Like, I don't need to do DEI. I don't need to do net zero. That's all
Even
done.
Christia had said that in one of the press conferences that they were saying, yeah, we never really did believe in the carbon tax. It's like, really? And yet you were the finance minister.
Yeah, I was only
Wow.
doing what I was being told. I was being a team player. Like, okay, well, that's great. Yeah, look at how
That's what we want to elect.
Yeah. 5 banks already announced they're dropping all their net zero stuff. And how many the University of Alberta dropped DEI. Everybody's like, you know, some guys are idiots till the end. I mean, Jagmeet Singh.
I was at a health conference about a month ago, and that was DEI was a topic. And sure enough, right at the very end, everybody was actually, they didn't even call it DEI. They called it EDI. I think just to kind of get around the whole, what it actually was.
Yeah.
And you could tell that people were like, no, we're done with this.
Yep.
So I think it's going through the
there's little pockets of
corporations.
resistance here and there, but I'm actually quite surprised that Carney's still hanging on to his variations on the carbon tax and stuff. But he's the World Economic Forum, man. He's going to have to be the cheerleader until the very end.
Yeah.
Well, if you have globalist ambitions and you're really not interested in Canada, then I mean, why would you change your ways? Just keep going. But one thing that it really surprised me about the after conversation at the WEF, like after Trump did his speech, there were some conversations that I watched where they were actually saying things like, oh, you know, where did we go wrong? We need to change our plan a little bit, you know, talking as if like, oh, where did we lose the faith of the people, blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe when you tried to tell them that being a human was a frickin' scourge on the planet and we all need to die in order to save the world, right? Maybe that's where you went wrong. So it was.
I think those were
didn't
Trudeau's
expect that.
exact words about 2 weeks ago, actually. Like, somebody literally asked him about that. Like, don't you think people have bigger worries than climate? Like, don't you think putting food on their plate is a bigger worry?
Yeah, I remember that.
Trudeau literally said, well, it might be, but it's not. It's my job to make sure they understand that the climate is a bigger worry. It's like, yeah, you're
You're out of it. Yeah.
You're out of it. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, look at the funny stuff this week. Like, Jagmeet, was it yesterday or today that Jagmeet said we should impose 100% tariff on Teslas, like on electric vehicles? I'm like, dude, like you've already passed a law that says we're not allowed to, like you've already passed a law that says we're not allowed internal combustion engines after 2035.
Yeah.
But now you won't let us buy Teslas. They already put 100% tariff on Chinese-made EVs. Now he wants to put 100% tariff on. What are we supposed to do? And when they talk like that, that's when you realize they don't know what they're talking about. They have no idea.
And
no idea.
The municipalities just imposed bylaws that fuel stations in the Greater Vancouver area have to have charging stations. So, hey guys, go out and spend $150,000, $250,000, $500,000 with the weird municipal permitting in Vancouver so that you can charge these cars. Oh, by the way, we're not going to have any more come into the country. So smart.
Yeah, no, yeah. Look at Chrystia Freeland today. She said, if I'm elected, I will fix the price of food. I will eliminate GST on first-time home buyers, which, by the way, there are no first-time home buyers lately. Like anybody buying a house is somebody who currently has one and who's
that is true. I agree.
Swapping because young kids are not buying homes. What else did she say? I'm going to reduce the middle tax bracket from 22 to 21 and a half, which will save like $250.
Wow.
Like, you guys are out of ideas. They're completely, it's like, really? How about you give us a $5,000 tax break? Like, how about you literally, like, reduce the tax brackets, every one of them by 2%?
And when they do this 22 to 21.5%, you think, okay, well, we'll save that. Do you know, coming from a corporate sort of situation, how many forms have to be reprinted? How much learning has to be redone?
Millions of dollars.
Computer programs in order for this to work.
Kerry, the GST break that they gave us at Christmas, right? It went from the middle of the month. Like, it went from the middle of December and it ends next week in the middle of February. So if you're a business who runs on a calendar day or a calendar month, yeah, you're screwed in the middle of it. I know. Yeah. Welcome.
I wonder if it was intentional. Like, are they that inept? They can't be. Can they be?
Well, they did the same thing during CERB. Remember CERB? When they did CERB, whatever it was, 3-4 years ago, I remember because I was still working in those days and I was doing payroll, and CERB periods were like in these 2-week periods that didn't even coincide with
the month
typical month end or pay period. And then at the end of the year, when we issued T4s to staff, we had to give box 40, which was their earnings for the year. But then we had to say how much they had earned there was a box 40.A, B, C, and D, because we had to declare earnings during the CERB periods so that the government could then cross-reference whether somebody had received CERB and earnings at the same time. The year-end T4s in 2022 were a freaking nightmare. Yeah. So when it's that complicated, you feel like telling your employees, okay, you guys all keep working. I'm going to give you all $2,000. Don't anybody apply for CERB, and I'm giving you your T4 with one fucking slip. Done.
It'd be easier.
Yeah. Well, some businesses did that with the GST, right? Because they knew, like the GST break over Christmas. If Walmart sold the little Legos for kids age 7 and under, they had no GST. But if an adult like me bought his Lego Combine, which was rated 18 and over, that wasn't considered a toy, so there was GST on that. And so now I'm at the counter and I'm looking at my bill, and I didn't do it, but people are complaining, going, how come the stores just gave up and said, you know what? No GST on everything. We'll figure it out later. Like, oh,
That's
yeah.
Oh,
It's just crazy. By the way, this is crazy, right? Like, I get this for Christmas
That's awesome.
from my boys. Like, Legos are so different than when I was a kid.
Have you been to the Lego place in West End Mall?
I haven't set foot in West Edmonton Mall in 25 years, my friend.
Oh wow. Well, if you ever get a chance to go to a Lego store,
yeah,
it's pretty cool.
There's one in West End. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
At my niece, they had the Harry Potter castle, and it was like 800 pieces, and took 4 days to put it together or whatever it is. And it's so detailed, and it's like, yeah, there's no way we did that when we were growing up. We were biting the bricks off because they were sticking too hard. And
I have 3 sons, right? So I always gave Legos to the sons at Christmas. And then, as a dad, you end up building some of the Legos for them. But now it's weird. At Christmas, one of my boys gave me that combine. I'm like, that's cool. I got Legos for Christmas.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
fascinating.
The whole idea of about sovereignty. I mean, as we've gone through, there's a lot of complexity to it, and like you said right at the beginning, Marty, that you can't look at it from this big giant way of looking at it, because it is just so overwhelming, and we have to divide it up into chunks. And I think that's kind of what we need to educate people on, as to what sort of chunks there are and how people can get involved in those certain chunks. And of course, some of the comments have been coming up about not only federal and provincial government, but municipal as well. And I think no matter what, we have to get involved. And there's no sense in us sitting back anymore and hoping that someone else is going to do it, because no one else is going to do it. If it's not then.
Have you seen, what was that movie with aliens and the dude that flies his fighter jet into the anus of the spaceship?
You mean like a Star Wars kind of thing? No,
it was like not Will Smith. Yeah, it was Will Smith. Wasn't that one?
That was Men in Black.
The crop dusting drunk pilot flies the F-16 into the spaceship and blows it up.
Oh, Independence Day.
Independence Day. How could I forget that? Well, when we're American, I'll remember it. Can I say that out loud? Anyway, this is how I think of what you're talking about, Kerry. We got all of these little things going on. We got municipal governments doing weird things, which, by the way, municipal governments, folks, are a figment of the provincial government's imagination. They don't actually exist. We legislate them into existence. So that's a municipal government. They're doing all these things. The provincial government's doing some things we don't like. There's outside organizations, non-governmental organizations that are influencing our politics, shaping our future. We don't elect them. They're not accountable to us or anything. That's a bad thing. The federal government does all this crazy stuff, and they're having elections and leadership and blah, blah, blah. But at the heart of the matter is our province. And as soon as you realize that we have the ability to deal with all of those things in one fell swoop, the fighter jet up the anus of the spaceship to blow it up is the referendum on Alberta independence, because that gives us all of the leverage we need to do all of those things. And if at that point we can't fix them, it gives us the moral and the ethical, legal justification to declare independence and fix them for good. So we can, deal with municipal stuff as much as we want. We can deal with the federal government, try and elect the leader of the Liberal Party, which would be fun to do as a conservative. But at the end of the day, there's only one thing. There's only one thing that's going to solve these problems, and that is Alberta standing up for itself as a sovereign nation, charting their own course. Period.
No, though, and the way we were starting the show is we were talking about trying to find solutions instead of just bitching about the problems. And one of the things we talked about is it's a complex problem that needs to be broken down. There is a couple of big challenges, though. We'll get there eventually, but there's a couple of big challenges. Not everybody has the same vision, and there are people who have a different vision who have a lot of power that are working against us, right? So that's like when I was doing projects, if my boss said, this is what we're doing, and then he gave me the team, pretty much everybody on the team was moving the challenge was big, but at least we're all moving in the same direction. Here, you know, I spent a shit ton of time last summer going to NDP town halls because I wanted to go and bust their narratives, right? Especially the ones where they're bad mouthing the APP, the Alberta Pension Plan. And when I was in those town halls, I went, oh my God, like the NDP MLAs are literally lying to people and telling them like a bullshit story that's against what we're trying to do. So we have to fight some of that disinformation. Anyways, I don't want to get into that. We're winning the battle. We're winning the battle. What we're doing is we're breaking it down into pieces. We're shining light on that corruption, on that wastefulness. We're giving good examples. Luckily, once in a while, we have an ally like Trump next door who shines the light on how it's done. And we'll get there. I mean, we'll get there. We'll get there.
And this is, I guess, where I will chime in and say, you know, if folks, if you want to go that direction, the only group that has maintained this position from their inception is the Alberta Prosperity Project. Mm-hmm. And what Marty, what you're describing, you're saying it's necessary that we have a massive amount of education and we get this, we shine the light on these problems and we educate people as to what the solutions are. That's what the APP is all about, and that's what they were created to do. That's what they are doing. So if you want to tip the scales a bit, help them out, volunteer, donate, get a membership, do whatever you can to help them educate Albertans as to the necessity of this referendum and how we fix these things. And not only that, but Kerry has spent like the last year and a half, Kerry, doing webinars for APP on behalf of APP, explaining to people some of these other problems that we're trying to deal with and other things they can do while we're pursuing the greater goal, right? So I would encourage you all.
APP's done great work, and so have a few other groups, right? And like I'm not specifically affiliated with any group. I lend my voice to a lot of groups because they all have the same kind of goal. One thing I'm still working on in the coming year and years is to bring some of the other, like to try and create that bigger tent where we come. And we saw it, right? We saw it at the AGM. I mean, I am Albertan and Take Back Alberta. Well, not Take Back Alberta, but APP and others are coming together. And we have to because that unfortunately that is one of the problem. It's not a problem of the right, but it is a problem of the right. Right-leaning individuals are by definition independent.
Yes,
and they're by definition independent, self-sufficient, proud. And so bringing us together under a common cause is always a problem just because of that. It's a good problem to have, but it is a problem. We're independent, so we get along until that pesky 5% difference kind of causes us to burn everything down around us. Historically, that's what's happened. Boy, when we got a really, really good common enemy, boy, did we ever come together then, right? I mean, that's but I don't want to create a false crisis just for that purpose. But we're getting close. We have a crisis on our hand that could perhaps bring us all together finally once and for all. The crisis is if the Liberals steal an election. I mean, if the Liberals get reelected, to me, they will have stolen an election, and that's existential. That's a crisis that we will have to deal with. And in a sense, there's a sick little part of me that kind of hopes they do. Go ahead, steal an election, kick the hornet's nest, and see what happens.
Well, it certainly gets people to pay attention, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then for sure, the independence movement would go through the roof. There would be no question about that.
Well, look when Trudeau won his second term, right? Wexit just exploded and the numbers grew exponentially in weeks, and I thought, holy crap, this is actually happening. But like usual, it just kind of
and behind the scenes as a website manager, you did notice an uptick in the last couple of weeks, of people signing up for the newsletter.
I was going to say that
it's been huge.
APP has had like 2,000 signups at least within the last week. We just had a meeting yesterday. Wow, feels like 2 or 3 days ago. And no, it was just yesterday. We were going through some of the numbers, and there's not only a lot of people that are signing up, but a lot of people are asking how to get involved. So that's amazing. And that's what we need, right?
Well, and the AGM, the UCP AGM in November was another example of that. I mean, it doesn't matter what, if you were completely for or against it. The fact is, almost 7,000 people from a party came to an event in Red Deer. Like, that's big. Boy, the organizers next year's AGM are going to have to pick a bit. Where are they holding it? Edmonton?
It's in Edmonton, and they originally wanted to have it at Rogers, but that was too expensive, and they weren't sure whether or not they'd get. I think the break even is like 15,000 people there, whatever it was cost wise.
A lot of people.
So it's at somebody in the comments will know where it is, but it's like at the there's a convention center or something there that's that easily holds like 7,000 people. So that's the idea. And I think they've actually announced where it's going to be. Although, again, if all of a sudden there was a surge and they had 10,000 people, it'd be the same thing as what happened at Red Deer. It was going to be at one venue, and then at the casino, I think, and then they ended up changing it to Westerner Park, which again is probably like twice that size. So
yeah, and then and we said Albertans or right-leaning people are generally independent and are hard to whatever muster together. And then Albertans, by tradition, we're not very political. Like it's my experience. I mean, I've traveled across the country, and like politics in Quebec is a blood sport. Like Quebec, you see it manifest itself in like every political party in Quebec, for instance, has a youth branch that's very active. So you'll have the Liberals and the young Liberals and the Conservatives and the young Conservatives, and people take a very different approach to politics, whereas Albertans, we tend to be the make hay when the sun shines kind of people, and we're seldom political, which is why we were so easily abused for years, and that's changing. But that's a real problem. We don't have a youth branch of any of our parties. Like, we got to get the youth in this province involved.
Yeah, for sure. But I was going to say, I think in the last 4 or 5 years, I think there's a lot of people that are going to be involved, and they're going to stay involved.
Yes.
Right. We were so passive. Like I certainly wasn't involved in politics prior to even 2019. Like even at that point, it was kind of like, oh, I'm looking at doing something. But when my business was shut down and it affected us, affected Chris, obviously affected you, Marty, that's when things went, we need to do something.
Yeah, I'm active in 3 constituency associations in the Calgary area, 2 in Calgary and my own here in Airdrie Cochrane. And the Airdrie Cochrane AGM this year was in January on like a miserable cold day, similar to today. Like it was like minus 25. I thought, oh God, nobody's going to show up. This is going to be a flop. Yeah. And I showed up. I was like, whoa, there's 100 people. So we had, it was good. We had That's people awesome. Volunteer for all the roles, president, treasurer, all the roles. We had directors. We had a good chat, and it was encouraging. And then of course, I go to the Calgary Law Heat in Calgary is extremely busy. And then I go to Acadia and a few others. So people are waking up that, it's actually it's better than voting, like getting in, like you said,
it is
choosing, influencing from the inside, choosing the candidates that then become the MLAs. That's where you win the battles.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you know what? We found out it's kind of fun too. Like the UCP AGM, it's a blast. Like it's an absolute riot. There's so many awesome people there. Like even some people you disagree with, you get to chat with, and the food is great, but it's not as great as the Whistle Stop Cafe. But it's good, right? So it's not just a boring, dry political thing. I mean, some parts of it is like policy and governance stuff is really like blah, but it's important. But the stuff around it is great. It's a great time.
I saw a post Corey Morgan swung by your restaurant the other day.
Yes,
did you see?
We had lunch together. Yeah.
Saturday. Yeah. I need to make a trip that way. I have I just don't travel anymore. I just don't have a reason.
I'm up there all the time. You can catch a ride with me. So that's easy.
Maybe we'll do that someday.
We'd love to have you there, Marty, for sure.
Yeah. I'm trying to convince my wife we need to go on a trip somewhere, but she likes to stay at home. Right on. Hey guys, how long are we going? I'm just
we're gonna wrap up right now.
I
was just gonna say, so any last words before we sign off here?
Well, there's lots of questions, but I think we got most of them just in the nature of the conversation.
Hey, let's meet again in a month from now when after
yeah.
the Liberals have elected their new leader.
So even Nikki said that too. If the plan to elect Liberal Ruby in the leadership election actually occurs, then what? As opposed to Carney or Freeland.
You know? I asked the question today. Like, I think they're going to disqualify her. They're going to find an excuse to disqualify her shortly.
And they're going to get down to the two. Yeah,
she's so popular, but then on the flip side, they don't want to disqualify her because I think she's beyond splitting the vote. She might actually win. Like she's got a powerhouse machine of raising money, is what she's doing. So no, it's going to be. My closing words is it's. I didn't have any of this on my bingo card. Like when I was doing my. When I was doing my 2025 predictions there at the end of December, I missed completely.
Oh yeah, I was way off.
Yeah,
I thought it was just going to be an asteroid, and that was it.
Yeah, and then we got a couple of interesting. I hope it works out the way most people expect it to. I hope, in my opinion, what should happen right now is the Liberals do your stupid little leadership thing. Parliament resumes. Face an immediate non-confidence vote, get punted out, send us to the elections before May long weekend, and then don't retaliate with anything against Trump right now. Let him do his thing. I think a lot of it will backfire on him as much as anything else. Plead a little bit, say give us the courtesy of letting our new government get settled in, and then let's play then let's play dirty all you want, and then hopefully we end 2025 with a plan to rebuild. I don't think the country is beyond repair. Quite simply, I just want the country back to the way it was in 2014. I'll settle for that as a starting point. Like,
I'd have to go back in time to see exactly where we were in 2014. Was that
like 1904?
A document?
Yeah, 1904 would be great. But okay, maybe 2012, 2011. Put me back there, and then with the crystal ball, and then then we're good. Yeah.
No, I agree.
Yeah. Well, right I'll say I hope people are motivated to be involved and use your voice wherever you can. Get educated as best you can. Know what you're talking about. Watch the webinars, listen to the podcast so you can speak to people, because there's another way this could go. Very opposite of what Marty said. It could also go. Jagmeet Singh decides to prop up the Liberal government who installs Carney as the leader. He becomes the prime minister, and they don't have an election because of the threat of Canada losing or being annexed by the United States. That is it could happen, right? So it could go either way. And really, it's going to depend on what people do.
Yeah. Jagmeet is still the kingmaker. You're absolutely right there. Yeah. He can prop up. Yeah, it's a perfect excuse for him. He can say, well, I tore up my agreement with Trudeau, but this is a new guy, so I'm going to give this new guy a chance. Yeah. And then he could he could prop him up until the October 25th. I think finding an excuse for not having an election in October would be a stretch. Even a tariff war will have petered out by then, hopefully. But you're right. There's definitely an ugly side. There's definitely and they've cheated so much to get this far. I wouldn't put it beyond them, right?
Exactly.
I wouldn't put it beyond them.
Anything can happen within the next couple of months, because even look back a couple of months ago, we didn't even think we would be having this conversation. So
no, I wasn't. Not in my wildest dreams.
Yeah, no. In the events of the last 5 years, none of us, if you told me 5 years ago what was going, where we were going, oh man, like talk about missing the boat. Yeah, I missed that one. Yeah,
that's Well, again, thank you, Marty, for coming on. Always a pleasure. And Marty's out at almost every event that I seem to be at. So him and I have shared a beer or two.
I like lending my voice that way. I'm like I said, I'm not. Yes, I am a right-leaning individual. I do officially belong to the UCP party. Provincially, I don't belong to any federal party at this point because all my membership's expired.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and I prefer that way to be. For me, that works to be sort of to just lend my voice and to help people is what I love doing. That's the part I like doing, like helping people understand the Canada Pension Plan, the APP. How do we become a nation? How the constitutions work? Where's the spending? I love doing that. Like that's just the natural analytical side of Marty. That likes to help people, and that's why I think that's one of the reasons I have a nice following on Twitter. People know that behind the scenes, like you can send me questions, man. Like I get emails and questions, and I spend days answering them because I like answering questions.
You are a fact checker.
Yeah.
Ouch. Oh,
Ouch.
wow.
And
Harry,
I don't get a dime from the CBC or the Trudeau. Yeah.
Exactly. That's right too. Okay.
Right on.
All right.
Well, also,
all right, guys.
say, Marty, that you're doing a fantastic job with what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And I don't think you're just going to be answering questions on Twitter. I see some pretty big things in your future, and I would fully support it.
Cool. Awesome. All right, guys.
All right. Well, then we'll say goodbye to Marty. Chris, stick on with me, I think, just for a minute or so. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Thanks,
Good night,
Marty.
guys. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Marty.
Take care.
Night.
There you go. That was awesome.
Kick the guests off.
What's that? I
Why
always
do you
cut
always
the
kick the guests off? You just kick them right off.
Well, it's just easier that way.
I suppose.
I could kick you off.
Yeah, just leave $5 on my nightstand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but no, it's always great to have Marty, and like I said, I've seen him at so many events. Almost every event that I've been to, probably in the last 3 months, he's been there or he has been at some point, and we've just missed each other. So it's always.
And I don't see him very often, but I also I wasn't on the original APP webinar when you interviewed him the first time either.
No, that's right too.
I missed that
one.
And
we briefly talked about that, and the other thing too is that if people don't really know, Marty is not a podcaster. He is he's almost like a journalist. He does stuff on X and on Twitter. He does have a YouTube channel that he really just does a bunch of hiking stuff. He's more like I'll dare say Survivor Man, but he's just like going out and hiking. And
he knows every trail everywhere in this province. Well, the man's been everywhere. Really,
yeah, he has been everywhere. So that's awesome. And he comes, as a great resource in terms of politics. And again, it's stuff that he's just noticed over his 25 plus year career as an engineer. And actually that was one thing we didn't even get into, is that his group was actually one of those that had to come up with the Energy East pipeline and figure out their hurdles. And in the end, we'll have to have him back when and if we decide to have some sort of an Energy East pipeline, because according to him, it's just not possible.
Not viable.
There's so many hurdles to deal with. So many.
The ship has sailed.
The land and the farm, and it's like anything. It's like trying to build the infrastructure of a city right now, and that city is already built. It's like, well, what do? You got to tear stuff away, and people are not happy when that happens. So,
well, I mean,
tear it down.
We're in this situation because we let the government run rampant. Really, that's what happened, and now we're going to fix it. And Marty says he doesn't think it's going to be right away. It could be years. I think we could probably get it done quicker, but the truth is, it's taken us decades to get where we are, and it might take us decades to get back out.
Yeah, so, I was hoping it would be done by like January 1st of next year. That would. Yeah,
wouldn't that be nice? It could be. It could be. I mean. When Trump ran for president of the United States the first time, this was my reaction. Ha ha ha! He's gonna win, and everyone laughed at me. And I just kind of said, well, whatever. It's gonna happen, and it happened. And people were like, oh my goodness, it happened. Yeah. Then he won again, and it seems like he says things, and he doesn't say things unless he can make them happen. Nothing is off the table for me right now.
It actually kind of works out better the way it did. And hear me out on this one. He won, Trump goes to DC, Is that a movie? But Trump goes to DC. He goes there. He doesn't really know what's going on. He aligns himself with a bunch of people that, people are advisors. And he goes, yeah, that's going to work for me. And then finds out maybe not, that's not going to work. Then he loses. And then we have the Democrats in for 4 years. And then the problems show up. And we go, this is not going to happen. We have to get Trump back again. Trump's had those 4 years where he's been out of government to say, okay, so what should we have fixed? What should we have done? And now he'd be able to do it. But if he won back to back, those issues may not have come to light. And then
have you read his book?
No, is The Art of the Deal? I've not read
I
that.
listened to the audiobook because I don't have time to read books anymore.
Yeah.
And I learned something very important about Donald Trump. Trump does not lose. He learns, and then he comes back and he wins. So his losses are an opportunity to learn how to win, and then he wins.
Yeah. So I think if anything, I think it actually worked out better. As painful as it has been over the last number of years, I think things are definitely looking up over the next couple of years. So
I agree. Speaking of looking up, thank you very much, Marty, for bringing your audience here to watch this Chris and Kerry show. Folks, if you're tuning in from Marty's X, I would ask that if you like what Kerry and I are doing, please like, share, follow, do all those things. What is it you do on X? Do you tick an X box? I don't know. You know what I mean.
Repost. Yeah, repost.
Yeah, share it, repost, whatever. Quote, say Chris looks fat from the one side if you have to. I don't care. I'm used to those things. But my point is, if you like this, please follow what we're doing because we do this all the time. We bring on all sorts of guests who have very relevant things to say about what's going on now.
Yeah.
Coming up right away, we have Dr. David Speaker will be on tomorrow. Dr. Speaker was one of the contributors to the Davidson report, known as the Alberta COVID report that some people are screeching and howling about. He's going to share his knowledge about that. Where I'm going to book Robbie Picard from Oil and Gas World. I haven't booked him yet, but it's going to happen. And we'll have Gary Davidson on again. Dr. Davidson will be on again, hopefully in an in-person setting to talk about the COVID report and why we need a judicial review and these types of things. So we bring on some really good guests from time to time and some up-and-comers that now are they're doing great things, and we love following what they're doing. So please join us on our journey as with the Chris and Kerry show. I don't think you'll be disappointed. And if you are disappointed, well, we'll give your money back.
Well, and likewise, if you do have ideas for guests or even topics, by all means, reach out to us. Go to TheChris&KerryShow.com, send us an email. There's lots of information on there. And I think there's even some links to Alberta Prosperity Project and the Alberta First Pension Group, which, of course, we're heavily involved with. And it's great to have that support. So if it comes from the Chris Kerry Show fan base, then that's amazing. Thank you so much for even being here. We've had at least 3,000 people watching today. So, that's awesome. Those are the numbers that we were kind of used to. And then things have dropped off for the last little bit. But Chris has definitely taken the bull by the horns and said, you know what, we're going to keep doing a few podcasts a week now. And I'm all for that as well. And it's sometimes it's difficult for us to do time. And that's why we can't do a Shadow Davis every night at 7:00 or whatever it is. But when we do, we will definitely try and let people know a day ahead of, at least a day, if possible. Yes. So, and that's it. That's all we got.
Stone, you are a wordsmith. I love the things you say. This is just fantastic.
Oh.
Stone Lee says, gives me comfort to see you and Kerry are on this like shit on a blanket, Grasshopper. Thank you very much.
That's true.
Appreciate it.
That is true. Yeah.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to do that one.
Not sure where that would came from. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Anyways.
Okay. Anything else, Kerry?
No, that's it for me right now. You guys have actually, you know what? Do you mind if I end off with one quick little thing?
Whatever you end off with is never quick, but I mean, go ahead.
I know. I'm going to try not to tear up, but a couple of weeks ago, I was on a podcast and I got some bad news about a buddy of mine that passed away. Yeah. And that buddy of mine was a really close friend, and he happened to be in Vegas. And where people may recognize it is he was the guy that put together when we were in the convoy. I reached out to him because he's a hell of a musician, hell of a studio producer, and gave him an idea to do a convoy video, or convoy music, I should say, and sent him some lyrics, sent him some voiceover stuff, and he came up with redoing all the music. And so with that, I want to leave you guys with that video, and that's from my good buddy Ryan, and I just need to cue this up because I'm not even sure where it is off the top of my head. And I know everyone's seen it, but it's a great video. It's a great video. Well, the video part is kind of what I put together, but the audio is definitely what he ended up doing. So listen carefully, and if you had a voice changer, you'd be able to hear me in the lyrics. And that was a funny thing, because when I was in Ottawa, I didn't really want to have my voice on the video. But now that we're back, it's kind of like I wish I could have gone back and even said to Ryan, hey, can you put my voice back in? But it doesn't matter. It's just one of those things. So we're going to wrap up with that convoy video. And if you want to stick around just for a video after that, I did a video of a song with Ryan as well. It's called Radio. And you may recognize somebody that's in that video as well. So with that, I'm going to say goodnight, everybody.
Thanks.
That's all good. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Yep.
Good night.
Breaker 19. You got a copy on me, Big Daddy? Come on.
Yeah, 10-4, Mama Bear. For sure. By golly, it's clean clear to Ottawa. Come on.
Yeah, it's 10-4, Big Daddy. And yeah, we definitely got to the front door good, buddy.
Mercy sakes alive. Looks like we got ourselves a great big Canadian convoy.
It was all that we heard January 23rd on the highway side by side, as we stand together like one big family and we ain't got nothing to hide. We're heading for Trudeau on our mission to freedom, about a mile from his parliament town. I said, Big Daddy, this is Mama Bear, and I'm about to put my hammer down. Cause we got us a Canadian convoy, rocking through the night. We got us a Canadian convoy, ain't she a beautiful sight? Come join our Canadian convoy, ain't nothing getting in our way. Come on, join our Canadian convoy, you will know something good to say. Convoy. By the time we rolled into Ottawa, we thousands of trucks and all. And ain't no roadblock gonna stop us, and we line up wall to wall. Yeah, them supporters are thick as bugs on a bumper, and we got crowds to cheer. I say calling on trucks, this is where we're stuck, and we're about to fight for freedom right here. Cause we got us a Canadian convoy, we're rocking through the night. We got us a Canadian convoy, ain't she a beautiful sight? Come and join our Canadian convoy, ain't nothing getting in our way. Come on and join our Canadian convoy, you will know something you better say. Convoy.
Yeah, you wanna give me a send on that, Big Daddy? Perfect, Big Daddy. You're real close. Yeah, Trudeau is hiding in his den. Mercy sakes, Big Daddy. Guess you better come a little closer then.
Well, we rolled up into Ottawa like a rocket slid on rails, and we stuck together like Trudeau sheep, and we'll leave them there to wail. By the time everyone gets to Ottawa, Trudeau might be on a trip so far. He'll be hiding like a cowardly son of a bitch, and so will all of his guards. There'll be armored cars and tanks and jeeps and rigs of every size. But the Parliament building may be empty, but choppers will fill the skies. Now we'll all line up and fight for our rights with all our screaming trucks. And with all of our supporters, we ain't giving up. We ain't giving up.
Yeah, Big Daddy to Mama Bear.
Yeah, 10-4, Mama Bear.
Listen, you wanna give a big shout out to Trudeau?
Yeah, tell him we're all tied, just like dynamite, and he's gonna need all the help he can get.
Well, he didn't respond because he's probably gone on a vacation hiding this time. But he's got to return or he's gonna get burned because he's run out of time. I said this message is for Trudeau, and we ain't going home. So you better come back, you son of a bitch, and give us back our freedom. 'cause we got us a Canadian convoy rocking through the night. We got us a Canadian convoy. Ain't she a beautiful sight? Come and join our Canadian convoy. Ain't nothing getting in our way. Come on and join our Canadian convoy. You will know something USA. Convoy.
10-4, everyone. What's your 20?
Ottawa. We will know what to do with all of them for sure.
Well, mercy sakes, good buddies. Way back and out of here. So let's keep Trudeau and his sheep in line. For we will all prevail. We'll rid this mandate one way or another and watch this damn ship sail. Hell yeah.
Now it's 5 years old on Daddy's lap, staring out the window at that big old world and that rusty Ford is listening to that radio. Nowadays things seem to change, fashion cars and aeroplanes, and people change, but one thing seems stay. And every time I wanna go back to my yesterdays, I turn that station on, and it takes me away to that place I fell in love, the place I found my soul, on those country roads, and rock and roll, the place I always know. No matter what may change, or to rearrange, I always have a place to call my home. In that Rio. We can go up slow on those dusty roads and trailer parks and fishing holes. At night time we watch for falling stars.